Hello everyone, my name is Tanvi and today I will be presenting on the topic Predictions on the demise of state sovereignty are premature. This presentation examines whether globalization and modern developments have actually weakened sovereignty or whether the state still remains central. To begin with, sovereignty has been the foundation of the modern state system since the Peace of Westphalia. Traditionally, it refers to supreme authority within a defined territory. However, in recent decades, scholars have debated whether sovereignty is declining due to globalization, supranational institutions, and transnational actors. My central argument is that sovereignty is not disappearing, it is transforming and it is adapting itself. Now, the classical concept of sovereignty. The classical understanding of sovereignty comes from thinkers like Jean Bodin and Thomas Hobbes. Bodin described sovereignty as absolute and perpetual power, while Hobbes saw it as indivisible authority necessary to maintain order. Key features include territorial control, non-interference, and legal supremacy. Now, the modern understanding. In modern era, Stephen Kressner defined concept into four dimensions: domestic, interdependence, international legal, and Westphalian sovereignty. This shows that sovereignty is not a fixed or absolute concept. Rather, it is layered and flexible. Now, globalization. One major argument for the decline of sovereignty comes from globalization. Kenichi Ohmae described the world as borderless, while Susan Strange spoke about the retreat of the state. The idea is that global capital flows and multinational corporations reduce the state's control over its economy. Supranationalism. Another argument is the rise of supranational institutions like European Union. Here, states voluntarily share authority and in some cases, supranational laws override national laws. Jürgen Habermas even described this as a move towards post-national constellation. Human rights. The global human rights regime has also challenged sovereignty. The idea of responsibility to protect suggests that states can be intervened in if they fail to protect their citizens. Francis Deng reframed sovereignty as responsibility rather than absolute control. Non-state actors like NGOs and terrorist organizations further complicate sovereignty. For example, Greenpeace influences environmental policies globally, while Al-Qaeda challenges state authority. James Rosenow described this as fragmentation. Now, the counter thesis. However, these arguments do not mean sovereignty is disappearing. Instead, they show that sovereignty is evolving. So, the claim that sovereignty is declining is actually premature. The argument of transformation. So, scholars like David Held argue that sovereignty is being restructured. Similarly, Annie Mary Slaughter talks about disaggregated sovereignty, where state functions operate through global networks. This reflects adaptation rather than decline. State resilience. Despite global changes, states still retain core powers. They control borders, maintain law and order, and regulate economies. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was states, not global institutions, that imposed lockdowns and managed responses. Reassertion. Rise of nationalism, Brexit, and Trump's America First. So, in fact, what we are witnessing today is a reassertion of sovereignty. Events like Brexit show a desire to reclaim national control. Similarly, when we talk about Trump's America First. So, by this particular movement, Donald Trump emphasized national sovereignty through policies which he introduced, that is, the America First. Now, international institutions. Even international institutions remain state centric. The United Nations operates on the principle of sovereign equality. As Robert Cohen argues, institutions exist because states allow them to exist. So, Kressner famously described sovereignty as organized hypocrisy. States may violate sovereignty norms in practice, but they continue to uphold them in principle. This shows that sovereignty is not obsolete, rather, it is strategic. Theoretical perspectives. From a theoretical perspective, realists see sovereignty as central, liberals see it as shared, constructivists see it as evolving. Alexander Venn emphasizes that sovereignty changes with norms and ideas. Critical evaluation. Overall, we can say that globalization is not destroying the state. It is often driven by states themselves. Non-state actors lack legitimacy and institutions depend on state support. Thus, sovereignty remains resilient and adaptive. For conclusion, we can say that the idea of sovereignty is disappearing is overstated. Instead, sovereignty is evolving in response to global changes. The state is not retreating, it is reinventing itself. Thank you so much.